Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Pardon me. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I really appreciate you being with me. By the way, my subscriber count is just creeping right on up. It is approaching 10,200. Now, I'm filming this on Monday morning. As of this morning, Monday morning, it was 10,200 and something. So, since my goal is 10,500 by the end of the year, hey, guess what? I think we're going to reach that. So, if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please do so. Hit the subscribe, hit the like, hit the share. Let's get this message out there. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your assistance in doing this. Okay, as I said, as I said yesterday, yeah, just having so much problem with my allergy. My nose feels like it's about to itch off. It's just won't let up on it. Okay, so yesterday we began a study. I don't know how long this is going to take. I've been struggling with this, to be honest about it. I want to develop this. I want to develop that. I want to develop this. I want to develop that, blah, blah, blah. And I keep going, well, I don't want to do 200 videos on Shemeni Atzerat. But I want to give enough so that you can you can touch the palate here with the beauty and the power and the importance of Shemeni Atzerat. So, with that in mind, what I did, I put together, with the help of Grok, I think it was Grok or Chat or something like that, as well as a lot of my own research, and as well with the information I mentioned in yesterday's video. My good friend Jim Wade had sent me information years ago. So I brought a lot of that information together, and I put it in, you wouldn't really call it an outline form per se, but what I want to do is to share with you what might be called an overview, a summarizing overview of the meaning and the significance of Shemeni Atzerat down through history, including how did the rabbinic writers view Shemeni Atzerat? And then coming forward to how did the early church view Shemeni Atzerat? Now, here's something interesting that I've seen so far. I haven't seen where the early church writers actually used the term Shemeni Atzerat. However, they wrote about the eighth day. Now, Shemeni Atzerat in the Hebrew means the eighth day. It's the day after the seventh. So once again, consider this to be kind of a summarizing overview of the issue and the subject of Shemeni Atzerat. And I begin stating this: the eighth day in the Hebrew scriptures, that is in the Tanakh, as well as in Jewish tradition, is tied directly to, obviously, circumcision on the eighth day. In Genesis chapter 17, 12, and Leviticus chapter 12 as well, we find the command for circumcision. Now, obviously, in Genesis chapter 17, it's not, the eighth day there is not part of Sukkot. It's part of the Abrahamic promise. Now, look, folks, this alone, okay, the fact that circumcision was on the eighth day and that circumcision ushered one in, as it were, into the Abrahamic covenant community, indicated a new beginning for even this child. This, quote, newborn child is entering into a new existence because now it's part of the covenant community. Through circumcision, on the eighth day. Now, again, let me emphasize, in Genesis chapter 17, it has nothing to do with Sukkot. Sukkot was the feast of harvest. Now, one could speculate and say, well, at this time, Abraham was dwelling in booths. That is to say, he was dwelling in tents, just like Israel dwelt in tents in the Exodus. So there could be an extrapolated correlation if we wanted to do that. But again, there was no Feast of Sukkot in the days of Abraham. The Feast of Sukkot was a distinctive feast given to Israel and no one else. So we find one of the very first mentions, obviously, you have creation in Genesis chapter 2, and man entering into the completed creation on the eighth day. God created heaven and earth 6 days. He rested on the seventh. Man entered into the creation on the eighth day, the completed revelation. But this is going to take too long if I make very many comments on all of this. So here you have, at the very beginning, the significance of the eighth day linked to circumcision. All right? As I just stated, in Hebraic thought, circumcision marked covenant inclusion. The eighth day suggests a move beyond the natural cycle of the 7-day creation week into a new order of covenant life. This is how the ancient rabbis thought. This is what they wrote. So in rabbinic thought, the eighth day represents a transcendent reality, something that went beyond ordinary creation time. A second idea associated with the eighth day was sacrificial and ritual purity. Now, I mentioned this briefly yesterday, so let me reiterate it here. In Leviticus chapter 9, verse 1 and following, Aaron and his sons were set apart, they were consecrated for the priesthood for 7 days. 7 days of purificatory sacrifices, rituals, prayers, etc., etc. And on the eighth day, their official ministry began. So is the eighth day significant or what? Leviticus chapter 14, verses 10 and 23. A leper who had been cleansed went through 7 days of purification. On the eighth day, he went through a final purificatory ceremony to declare him to be clean. A new beginning. A new creation. In Leviticus chapter 15, verses 14 and 29, any person who is unclean through some kind of a bodily discharge, and that can be caused by any number of different things, was likewise commanded to go through a series of purificatory sacrifices and ceremonies under the guidance of the priest. And on the eighth day, they were consecrated as pure. Once again, purification, eighth day, declaration, and new beginning. So here, obviously, the eighth day signified new beginnings. And in the case of a leper, in the case of someone who had had a bodily discharge, guess what? That meant they were restored to fellowship, because you see, anyone that was a leper was cut off out from the people. They were not allowed to be a part of the fellowship of the camp. If you were a leper, you were actually considered dead, because it was a fatal, terminal disease. But if perchance it went into remission, if perchance somehow or other you were cleansed, guess what? You went through that ceremony, and on the eighth day, you were restored to fellowship. You had a new beginning. Do you see kind of a train coming here insofar as the symbolic thought process that is associated with the eighth day? Illness, ostracism, purification, eighth day, restoration, new beginning. And then, of course, you come to the Feast of Tabernacles that we've been talking about for so long in my videos. And what do we find? We find two mentions that after the seventh day of Sukkot, what do you have? Oh, you have the eighth day, which is itself another Sabbath observance. No work whatsoever. And this is where it gets really, really interesting insofar as I'm concerned. The eighth day in Jewish thought was not considered to be just a continuation of the seventh day feast. No, it was considered a new beginning. It was considered to be, and they referred to it like this, a new creation. It was considered to be a climax. And some of the rabbis referred to Shemeni Atzerat as a day of dwelling with God, watch this, beyond the seventh day festival. Some rabbis referred to it in the following way. It is like a man who invites you to his house for a wedding feast. And that wedding feast is set for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days. So everything is wrapped up. The wedding feast is over, but the master of the wedding comes to you as an honored guest and says, I would really like to invite you to stay another day in fellowship with me and my family. This would have been considered a tremendous honor. It would have been a magnification of the honor shown to you by being invited to the wedding in the first place. But now it is this a day of dwelling with God after the 7-day festival. So some of the Jewish rabbis saw this as God saying, stay with me one more day. Now, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that absolutely beautiful? And as they said it, this symbolized a kind of intimacy, a kind of honor, a kind of glory that went above and beyond even Sukkot. Now, that's incredible. Now, I don't have time to go into the early church's use of the eighth day and the symbolism there. So I'll just cut it off here and hold this off until next Monday. Hopefully what I've been able to share with you, and I've got 3 or 4 more pages, but hopefully what I've been able to share with you will pique your curiosity. It will pique your interest, and it will help you to begin to see, as I've suggested already, the beauty and the glory and the majesty of Shemeni Atzerat. And make no mistake, folks, some of the earliest of the church writers, while they didn't use the term Shemeni Atzerat, guess what? They focused on the meaning of the 8th day. And it's really sad to me that a significant part of Christianity essentially chooses to shunt that eighth day significance off to the side and to deny it. And yet that is to deny the typological significance of Shemeni Atzerat. Thanks for joining me for this morning's morning musings. Listen, join Mike Sullivan and me tonight on preterist apologetics as we continue our study of the Song of Moses and its impact on Paul's writings, especially in Romans 9 through 11, and how Paul uses the Old Testament scriptures to discuss his doctrine of the salvation of all Israel. And then be sure to join me on Friday. Again, I'm going to have another new video on will the rapture be September 23rd, 2025. Boy, you don't want to miss that. I mean, I don't know what viral is, but I'm approaching 7,000 if it hasn't already reached there. All right. I mentioned to you on Monday when I'm filming this, it was already at like 6,300. And I mean, it's climbing by the hour, which is really, really cool. Okay. Once again, thanks for joining me. I'll see you on Friday.